The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on May 19th, 2026.
Good morning and welcome to Business Matters, brought to you by the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Due to the wide variety of programming heard on KAOI 1110 AM, all the opinions are not necessarily the opinions of Maui Chamber of Commerce. And now here's your host, the president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, Pam Tumpop. Good morning, Pam. How are you today?
Good morning, Gary. It is a wonderful day in Honolulu. How is it on Maui?
It's always a beautiful day on Maui. It's Maui. What else could go wrong?
Well, you know, I'm actually in Honolulu today. Came for a big conference yesterday and have several meetings. But it's great to talk to you, and I'm glad to hear it's gorgeous. It is always gorgeous on Maui, and I always love being home. But sometimes we come here for business.
Even during a Kona low, it's still Maui.
Yes. There you go. Oh, my gosh, this weather has been so interesting lately, hasn't it?
It has.
It's wild. Well, I get to overlook the boat harbor here, and so it's a beautiful view this morning. Yeah. So I'm staying at a hotel that is the last locally owned, locally operated hotel in Waikiki.
Wow.
Called the Equus, and very locally run, family-oriented, just a great place to be. So it's like my home away from home when I'm here. Yeah, nice place. But thank you for all you do for the show. I'm so excited today. We are going to talk about legislation. And the reason we're talking about legislation is the legislative session is over. But there are some bills that have moved forward, and those now will go on to the governor. So I wanted to share a little bit about, give you a legislative update on the action that over the 2026 legislative session. This session ended just a few weeks ago. And, there's a number of bills that, we want to share where everything landed. There's a number of bills that are moving on. And we wanted to share a little bit about how we feel about them and why. So one of the measures I wanted to share with you, it was a minimum wage study. It was Senate Bill 2129. And this measure would require the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism to study the impacts of Hawaii's scheduled minimum wage increases on employees and businesses across the state, including comparisons with other states that raised their minimum wage. And this is because there was a bill that a couple of years ago that gave us a multi-year stagger of minimum wage increases. So the chamber actually supported this bill because with Hawaii's rising labor costs, they continue to place pressure on employers that are already struggling with inflation, insurance, rent, and supply chain expenses. Supporters believed a formal economic study would provide lawmakers with real data on how wage increases are impacting and affecting hiring, staffing levels, pricing, and business sustainability. And I think it's really important to talk about this, too, because especially with our food insecurity and housing crisis, everybody says, well, we just have to make more, right? And we just have to make more regardless of what our skill set is or the type of job we're doing. We just all need to make more. And the challenge with that is, a minimum wage was meant to be a starting wage. It was meant to be when you started in a job, you got a minimum wage, right? And as you move up, you earn more. When you're more valuable to the company, when you help them earn more money to make the company more profitable, you earn more. And so a lot of people just think, well, no, the solution is just raise the minimum wage. And it's hurting many businesses. And we're hearing businesses actually, it's having some of the opposite effects because they can't pay more if they're not earning more and if conditions don't allow them to make more, right? If a business doesn't be able to exceed its expenses, it's out of business, and then workers lose their jobs. So this is a great study because they didn't do a study when they implemented these structured automatic minimum wage increases. And in these economic times, it's really prudent to do this study. So we supported that bill, and we hope that the governor supports it as well. And we suspect he will because there was a lot of support for that. There was another bill called the Business Competitiveness Goal. It was House Bill 1612. This bill establishes a statewide goal for Hawaii to rank among the top 30 states nationally for business climate by 2045, with interim benchmarks along the way. We have been, probably long before I joined the Chamber, but for the 20 years I've been with the Chamber now, advocating for our state to be a more business-friendly climate. So why is that important? Well, it's important because we want economic diversification. We live in an island state. We want higher paying jobs, and often economic diversifications and other industries have higher paying jobs in tech, in film and television, in high-end manufacturing. There's a lot of places, when you think about the loss of our sugar plantation at HCNS, they had a ton of engineers, okay, and engineers make a great deal of money. So there are, many jobs have different levels, of course, of jobs, but in so many other industries, there can be higher paying jobs. But to get some of those higher paying industries to come to Hawaii, you have to have a business friendly environment, because many states try to attract those industries. They want higher paying jobs in their region. They want to attract these large corporations, right? And so it has to make business sense, and it has to make financial sense. So by business sense, I mean strategic location. They can see how it will work in that region. And then, of course, it has to make financial sense. So we've been advocating because this past year we ranked on the CNN annual report 49 out of 50 states again, okay? And UHERO contended some of the reports because sometimes they look at certain measures. But at the end of the day, we're really at the bottom. I mean, yes, we don't have train systems here, and some other states have that kind of transportation, and you can get some points. But they look at some of these things, and they measure these things. And so, this has been a longstanding problem. And in industry and in economics, we've been saying for years, we have to get to a more business-friendly environment to sustain not only our existing industries so that people don't move away, but also to attract new ones, the type of economic diversification that we want to attract, that give us those higher paying jobs and give us diversity. And diversity in an economic situation, right? Diversity of business types is also good, because when you have a disaster, whether it's man-made or natural disaster, different industries fare better, right? So the diversity of industries can help taper off that devastation when you see major disasters. So anyway, on this business competitive goals, we liked that they were putting a bill forward. We liked the goal. It was very lofty, though, given where we're at, to try and get to be within the top 30 states, to leapfrog up, that by 2045. But possible, of course, if we get together and everybody supports this. So, we supported this effort, as I mentioned, and, many agree that Hawaii has consistently ranked near the bottom, and for affordability and for, ease of doing business, which impacts investment, expansion, entrepreneurship, and job creation. We really wanted to see this measure move forward. And the bill crossed over to the Senate, but was ultimately deferred by the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism. So the bill died. Was it too lofty a goal? This was at a time when I was at a session where we had both the House and Senate leaders at a meeting in Honolulu where we reviewed the CNN report with them, and people kept saying, this is the time for such a measure, right, especially after the wildfires. It was before the flooding. But, again, we were all saying this is an important time to be looking at this. Hawaii's got to move forward. So sadly, that bill died. So we hope to see something again next session. That is not something that goes, when a bill dies, it's not going on to the governor. It has to pass out of the legislature to move to the governor, who then can vote to accept the bill or veto the bill, and then has to give his reasons. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that process. But that was a good measure. It was a lofty measure, but fortunately it didn't move forward. So we're still in the same situation in terms of needing to improve our business-friendly climate. We also had an effort to look at business competitiveness an initiative to help businesses be more competitive. The Senate measure sets an even and more ambitious goal of placing Hawaii in the top 10 states nationally for business competitiveness by 2045. So anyway, and then in this one, the bill would require DBID to select a national ranking metric and establish a working group to recommend policies to improve Hawaii's competitiveness. We, again, supported it, and we supported it for the reasons I just mentioned. And, and again, this also had, again, looked at how this would help retain local talent. This measure was introduced and heard in the first committee, but then was not scheduled for hearing in the Senate Ways and Means Committee and died. So again, another bill trying to get to the same thing but a different way. You often see that in the legislative sessions, multiple bills aimed at different approaches, especially in the beginning before they cross over, and then, they can be modified or later, they can move forward with one version. But again, we saw both of those die. There was also a House Bill 2360, was a paid family and medical leave insurance program. So this was a very interesting bill. This would establish a statewide paid family and medical leave insurance program. And under the program proposal, payroll contributions from employers and employees would begin in 2029, with benefits becoming available in 2030. So we opposed this bill, and the reason we opposed it is employers are already providing paid family medical leave. There are bills that specify, laws that specify leave, and we and others expressed concern over the potential increase in payroll costs and administrative burdens, particularly for small businesses facing high operating costs. And employers also raised concern about staffing shortages already and the operational challenges of covering extended leave, because it was also looking at extended leave. So the bill crossed over to the Senate and had a difficult double joint committee referral. Those are challenging to get through. And it was not scheduled for a hearing in that first joint committee. So it died. Again, we need more studies. If some of these ideas could be helpful, but we have to look at how they're helpful. And often when they're looking at these measures that are greatly going to impact businesses, they don't bring the business community to the table, to be sitting at the table to help work out the bill. So we need to look at those things comprehensively. And when all partners are coming to the table, then we can work on better solutions. And again, it was duplicative to what many employers did, but it did allow employees to contribute even more on their own. We don't even know if people wanted to contribute more on their own for that kind of thing. So, those kinds of things actually are where we do really like to see a study. So we can get input from employers, we can get input from employees, we can educate on what the program might look like, more than just language in a bill, and we can involve everybody and see, okay, how could this work? Does it really work? Is it really needed given what's taking place? And evaluate it more fully. So that was an interesting one. There was another bill, House Bill 2367, called the Salary Transparency Requirements. This measure would require employers to disclose salary or hourly wage ranges in job postings and would remove the exemption for businesses with fewer than 50 employees. So we opposed this and argued that the bill would create additional compliance burdens for small businesses and reduce flexibility in hiring negotiations. Some employers also expressed concern that mandated ranges would not accurately reflect changing labor market conditions or employee experience levels. Wages are based on experience. Wages are based on productivity. And when you're putting things out to hire, this was concerning because what they wanted you to do was disclose salary or hourly wage ranges in the job postings. And some of those, when you're getting into a discussion, you might post something, and then if somebody doesn't get the job, or you don't offer them the job at that level because they just, maybe you see promise in them, but they don't have the experience now, so they're not ready in that range, it's problematic. And often if you post a range, you might be wanting to offer somebody higher as well because they come in with great experience. Or, I've had opportunities where I posted one job and found that the person's talent were good in that area, but also in another area. And maybe I wanted to broaden the categories and leverage it up and combine and see if they were interested in that. So there's a lot of different reasons that this is concerning. And again, for small businesses, it put certain burdens on them, which was challenging. This bill died during crossover, so it didn't make it through the process. Not sure if it will come up again. But again, measures like this, we need to bring everybody to the table. And often it's groups that are not business groups that are advocating for this kind of activity. And, it's one of these things that we need everybody coming to the table. We need to understand their concerns, and we need to understand the concerns of what businesses are facing with these postings and the legalities of it. So anyway, but it died. HB 707 was an agriculture transportation cost reimbursement program. Okay, so this bill would establish a transportation reimbursement program within the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity to help offset shipping and transportation costs for local farmers and ranchers. This bill would reimburse certain expenses related to transporting livestock, agricultural products, and supplies. Okay, we supported this bill, right? We need our farmers and our produce to get to market. We need them to be healthy and strong in our community. They are a huge part of our sustainability effort. It would strengthen food security. It would reduce costs for local producers. Again, working in an island state, right, with higher shipping costs, and we'll talk about Young Brothers again later, it would help small farmers remain competitive while supporting local food production. So the status of the bill has passed and is going on to the governor. So we, of course, hope he signs on to that bill, because this supports our farmers and ranchers, and we desperately want to see that happen. We had Senate Bill 2580, which is a film tax credit expansion. And we are huge supporters of expanding our film, television, and digital media. Sometimes digital media is referred to as multimedia, but in Hawaii, we want it to mean multimedia as well as art and music, because we have so many phenomenal artists and so many amazing musicians. And that definition helps ensure that some of our local musicians, selling a song at a time is really rough. But if they can make a song or even background music that is played in a film or a television show, their rewards are exponentially greater, right? It's such a better financial way for them to go. So we actually really supported this bill. What it would do is it would increase Hawaii's motion picture, digital media, and film production tax credit. The proposed raise to the tax credit it was 27% on Oahu and 32% in the counties outside of Oahu with population under 700,000, which also includes Maui County. So we get to give an even greater tax break than on Oahu, recognizing the impact to the neighbor islands. So we argued that Hawaii's companies compete globally for film production projects, and incentives are critical to attracting productions that generate jobs and spending here in Hawaii. Film productions support hotels, restaurants, transportation companies, service companies, construction crews, local vendors, and creative professionals here. So this bill passed the session and is enrolled for the governor. So we wholeheartedly encourage everybody to talk to the governor, let him know this is an important bill. We also saw a general excise tax bill for changes in film production. There were two bills, Senate Bill 2796 and House Bill 2590. And so, and again, those are referred to as SB for Senate Bill and HB for House Bill. These companion bills would apply to the manufacturing general excise tax rate to motion picture and digital media productions, while also exempting certain payroll-related pass-through costs from the general excise tax. Okay, so in manufacturing, so what they're basically saying is if you're producing a film here, Hawaii has a manufacturing excise tax rate that is lower than the general excise tax rate. And so, again, as another attraction method for film and television production, we said, well, we would look at film and television production as basically manufacturing a product, like we do for, say, jams and jellies. That's a very extreme example, but, just to give you the sense of manufacturing things and look at those productions as a manufactured product. So we supported this. We said the changes would modernize Hawaii's tax structure and improve competitiveness with other filming destinations. The bills aim to reduce production costs and encourage more projects to choose Hawaii. Unfortunately, both bills died in the session. So this did not happen. So one incentive moved forward, and this one did not. But, we, again, looking at our business-friendly environment, looking at how we attract new industries, Chief of War has come out, and a lot of that production wasn't done in Hawaii for a number of reasons. These bills would have helped. So, again, we look at all of these things. And, again, I don't want to just say these incentives would have helped. I'm not going to say it was going to be the end-all, be-all. There's other things we need to work on as well in Hawaii. But it would be another tool to help. So we're really looking at it. We're looking at our diversification and industry attraction. We need to have more tools in the toolbox. So anyway, it is where it is. And so, again, it doesn't go to the governor because it died in session. There was a bill, Senate Bill 2463, intoxicants while operating a vehicle. This measure proposed lowering the blood alcohol content threshold from 0.08 to 0.05 for driving under the influence of an intoxicant. So we shared our concerns with this bill that it may impact our visitor industry, would set Hawaii apart from most other states in the nation except Utah, who has an extreme law in this area. And there wasn't evidence that lowering the threshold stopped drunk driving, and it would help prevent accidents. So most people who are in motor vehicle accidents are in those accidents when they look at the alcohol content, it's much higher. It's really generally much higher. And often, sometimes people who maybe swerved or did something and they might be pulled over, if they were asked to do this test, they might have just had one Chardonnay at lunch, and that might not have been the reason for what happened. But now they've had the breathalyzer, and it pulled, at that lower level. So we shared that wasn't the way to go, and there were studies that showed it's not the way to go. There were also studies, but those studies didn't take into effect. There was broader issues that they didn't take into effect, and it was a challenge. And of course, when you're listening to an issue like this, there are people testifying who've been through horrible accidents, right? And we understand. So, what we wanted to do is say, look, for the people who are drunk driving and shouldn't be driving on the road, right, we need to increase the penalties for drunk driving, right? We need to make it such a big deterrent that you don't do that. And, our restaurants and bars are really, their liquor license is, is something that they take very seriously, and they have rules. And when they see people, when they see people who they feel are drunk that have been drunk at a bar, oftentimes they'll say, listen, you can't drive, you need to get an Uber. Sometimes people will get them an Uber. It's a problem, right? And so there's many things that our establishments do to prevent that. And so, but this lowers that alcohol limit, and again, would make people say, hey, wait a minute, this is not the right thing to happen. So again, we need to study it. Only Utah is the one that outright has this law. And from our view, what we really need to do is punish the people who are doing something wrong and not change a law that affects the industry, that affects many industries in Hawaii. Punish those who are doing something wrong and handle it that way, and we supported that bill. This bill made it through crossover but died and was not scheduled for final committee hearing. So the bill has died. It's not going to the governor. So let me continue on, because there were other bills that impacted liquor, and liquor control is an issue that is regulated. And so there was a liquor tax bill, and the bill replaced the defined liquor category subject to the liquor tax with alcohol by volume categories, but with that separate rate for beer manufactured by small craft pub licensees. So this was going to raise the cost for producing liquor in Hawaii. And it was they said that the tax code was old and they needed to raise more money. And again, this is a time where we are looking to raise more money. But it was going to hurt many producers, and it was going to take things to a different category. So we opposed this bill, and the bill did die at crossover. And then there was a Class 10 special liquor permit proposal, Senate Bill 2835. And basically, we supported the bill this session because this measure focused on improving flexibility and efficiency for temporary event permitting from liquor departments in counties with fewer than 200,000 residents, but more than 100,000 residents. So that would help Maui County. But basically, why we supported this is business organizations, event organizations, nonprofit organizations, hospitality stakeholders, and more. You know, they try to get these special event permits, right, from an already established liquor licensee, and they play a huge role in supporting festivals, nonprofit fundraisers, business events, tourism activities, community gatherings across the state. And so supporters said, you know, streamlining this permitting process can help reduce administrative burdens while supporting the local economic activity for restaurants, caterers, event venues, musicians, nonprofits, and local vendors, as well as our community and the people who enjoy these many events. Because oftentimes an event can't be promoted unless you know that you're going to have the liquor license. And so we've seen on Maui this taking a very long time, and it's been a long and arduous process. So this was critical for Maui, actually. Not all of the neighbor islands had some of the issues that we have faced for years. And so, but this was a great measure to address this and change an older code that was impacting everybody across the state, but was really impacting Maui. And so the measure was passed and is going to the governor. So we hope that he will continue to keep that bill in place. Another bill was House Bill 1713, and it was school impact fees. And so this proposal expanded exemptions from school impact fees for certain housing developments. School impact fees, right, to build the schools, get imposed on many housing developments. So again, what does that do? It hampers the affordability of housing. When those fees of building schools is passed on to local builders who build homes, they have to pass it on in the price of the housing. So this bill was passed and transmitted to the governor. We supported it for that reason. We wanted to reduce the burden on building affordable housing because this adds a costly expense, right, raising the home prices. So we're thrilled to see that, and again, we want to see that go all the way through and be passed. And we're a unique state when it comes to our education, right? Across the continent, many other regions are funded by school systems are funded by the counties, right, and sometimes by the cities. So in Hawaii, we have one statewide system, and over time, we started passing the educational school system, educational. The thought was, well, as you build more housing and you have people moving into areas, you need more schools, and if you need more schools, well, let's charge more on the development. And again, this is just one of those areas that keeps adding more to the cost of doing that. Senate Bill 2075 is on public procurement. This bill requires purchasing agencies to apply a 5% flat rate local preference in evaluating bids on proposals from qualified Hawaii bidders to or offers who submit timely preference certification. So this is saying we want to procure services here locally first, even if there's a 5% differential in that one bid over somebody else's bid. Okay, so we supported this. Local preference for Hawaii bidders for state procurement. Well, having state procurement is big. It can help many businesses, and creating a process for the certification, which this bill would do, was really important, right? We need to buy Hawaii first, right? We always say buy Maui first, buy local first, right? So this gives local businesses the opportunity to bid on state projects, which helps them buffer a little bit for our increased costs for doing business in an island state. and sustain and recycle funding back into our local economy. So thankfully, this measure passed. And I just want to say a big mahalo to Senator Angus McKelvey. He was a part of the impetus for this bill and championed it along the way. And this is a very helpful measure, and we chimed in, of course, all along the way on these bills. All the bills I'm mentioning, we chimed in throughout the entire process on all of these because these were important bills that among the 900 we were tracking. Sometimes you wait and see on a bill. You might be tracking 900, but some of the bills you wait and see. Is it moving in the right direction? Obviously, if it's a high priority bill, you're tracking it all the way along. Sometimes, though, if you see it's moving in the right direction, or you're waiting to see what happens before you bring in, because sometimes some things on the fence and you're waiting to see, well, what direction are they going and how are they moving? But we tracked a lot of bills, and this was a great bill for all of Hawaii, and so we're so excited about this. There was a bill, HB 1334, Access Deer Meat Donation Program. I've said before, I sit on the board for Feed My Sheep Who Feeds the Hungry across the island, Food Bank, and many other nonprofit organizations, as well as charitable individuals who give people, deer meat, are trying to help others. And this measure was supported by businesses and community organizations because it focused on expanding the processing and donation of excess deer meat to help address food insecurity while also supporting deer population management efforts and protecting those who donate the meat. Because when you're donating the meat, you're doing it with the best of intentions. Nobody's trying to give any kind of meat that might be tainted to anybody, right? We're trying to help people. But in other regions, they've had laws that protect people, and we've worked on something like this for a number of years. So we said the measure creates multiple benefits for Maui residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. Excess deer overpopulation has created serious agricultural damage and environmental concerns, particularly on Maui. At the same time, the bill would help expand food distribution efforts by allowing more donated venison to reach local families and nonprofit organizations because they don't have to worry about fear of the lawsuit. Businesses and community advocates viewed the proposal as a practical partnership opportunity between hunters, processors, ranchers, farmers, and food distribution organizations. The bill passed and was transmitted to the governor. So we can't be more thrilled because we've worked on this, 5 or 7 years. It's been a while. And so thankfully we have seen this bill move forward, and it's going to open up more things and get more healthy meat on that venison in the hands of local residents and those in need. So it's really a great program. There was Senate Bill 3255, and this was a currency and cash transaction modernization. So I bet you're wondering what we were trying to do. So this addressed an issue many businesses have quietly been dealing with for years, and that is coin shortages and cash transaction challenges. The bill focused on currency handling, and again, there's that penny issue. So with the lack of pennies these days, they talked about rounding practices up in response to ongoing nationwide penny shortages. So why we supported it? Well, many retailers and cash handling businesses with the coin shortages haven't been able to deal with the penny issue, and it's creating operational inefficiencies, transaction delays, and adding administrative burden. So supporters believe the measure would help modernize cash transaction practices and provide businesses with greater flexibility when exact change was unavailable. Business advocates also noted that many consumers are increasingly using digital payments, reducing the issue, and providing an alternative way to avoid cash rounding. So this measure passed. So that could mean you're going to see a few cents more. But we're also finding people who are, they don't have the money, they don't have the pennies, and nor do the businesses given the shortage. So it's a great way to solve that issue. We don't like things that cost more, right? You'll note that we often fight things like this, but this is an issue that's been serious on both the consumer and the business side. I do encourage you, though, if you're worried about it and you see a penny on the street, pick it up because, you can still pay if you can do exact change. That's not the problem. It's just the problem if neither the business or nor the consumer have the pennies to make it, so they rounded up. So anyway, that bill passed, and it's before the governor. We had Senate Bill 2673, which is a statewide permitting tracker, another priority for businesses this session, because it proposed establishing a statewide permitting data standard that required each county to publish monthly updates on building and civil engineering permit data in accordance with that standard. The bill aimed to improve transparency and accountability across all government permitting systems. Permitting has been a huge problem in Maui County for decades. Long before I joined the chamber, and certainly the entire time I've been there, permitting delays slow housing building, and we have a housing crisis. We've gone from affordable housing, that term is out the window, because affordable is not affordable if it's not attainable. So now everybody's moved to attainable. But these permitting delays are huge hindrance, and I talked about this before. So what we supported is, recognizing the permitting delays continue to be one of the largest barriers to housing. It also impacts infrastructure, renewable energy, and private development projects throughout Hawaii. We've got people who are trying to build cottages as their own home and are held up for a very long time. Supporters said a centralized permitting tracker would allow applicants to monitor projects progress in real time, improve communication between agencies and applicants, identify bottlenecks, and encourage faster permit processing, because we'd be able to see where things are at more readily. And through the Speed Task Force, which Gregor Illigan, who's from Oahu here, but championed, there was work to say, we've really got to address our overall permitting system. And we got to listen to each county present on how they handled their permits, and their processes were far better than Maui County by leaps and bounds, some more than others, but it just showed us in Maui County, we really got to fix our permitting problem. But this was looking at this statewide, and this would put a lens on statewide, who's doing well, who's not doing well, what is this person doing that the other person might want to look at, and I don't mean person, I mean counties. But it would shine a bright light on how is this working, how do we fix it, and when we have a housing crisis, not only in Maui County, but statewide, how do we look at solutions? So we were really excited about this. And I just want to say that, we talked about how the importance of improving permitting efficiency is critical for our economic recovery, especially on Maui. But, of course, we've seen a lot of issues across the state with the recent floods, housing production, infrastructure investment, and long-term business growth statewide. This measure passed. And so hallelujah, and it is moving forward to the governor. We also saw county labor standards, Senate Bill 2140. This bill authorized counties to require contractors to disclose employee wage, benefits, hour, and employment status information, and also authorized counties to deny, revoke, or suspend building permits for violations of related laws. On the bright side, it also established a process by which an owner or developer may replace a non-compliant contractor and transfer the building permit to the replacement contractor. So we shared concerns. We shared strong concerns on fair labor practices and compliance with wage and employment laws enforcement, because enforcement already falls under the Hawaii State Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. And industrial relations. That already exists, right? They're already mandated to look at this. So now you're kind of creating a duplicative process. We were also concerned that it adds another layer of regulation on already delayed county permitting systems. Again, we want faster permitting. So the bill passed, and it is moving forward to the governor. So while the addition of the process for an owner or developer to replace a non-compliant contractor and transfer the building permit is important. That part, if somebody is a non-compliant contractor, we want the ability to transfer the building permit to somebody else. That would be a positive step. But we're going to have to ask the governor to veto this bill, given the concerns of the unnecessary oversight and the further challenges it will back up permitting in general. If the bill was simply to do that one thing, we would have supported it wholeheartedly. But you put one thing in the middle of several things that just don't work, and it's problematic. So we will be ringing in on that. Senate Bill 2140 looked at county labor standards. And this bill required an employer to file a response either accepting or rejecting or objecting to a treatment plan from a physician in a workers' compensation case within 10 days of receipt. It imposed monetary penalty if an employer does not file a response in 10 days unless there was good cause for the delay. Clarifies that a treatment plan is deemed accepted if the employer fails to file certain documentations within the 10-day period. So this is concerning. While we agree that employees should not have to wait an exceedingly long time for care in workers' compensation cases, right? That's why employers pay for workers' compensation insurance by law, but that is a necessary thing that is paid for. The current law already notes that if an employer fails to respond, the treatment plan is deemed accepted. So you're adding another layer, but you're adding more things to it by a monetary penalty for a law that already exists that requires them to do it. Okay, and so, it says, so we already have a penalty for no response, and so adding another layer is an unnecessary punishment. We believe the response window is too short, considering businesses also have to coordinate with insurance companies, legal counsel, and et cetera to make an informed decision. So it's not just, they have to look at the situation from all angles, and they already feel the time frame is too short. The bill passed and is going to the governor. We are considering asking for a veto on this. We're looking into it further. Again, there's too many angles to this measure. So anyway, we're concerned about that. There was a bill for boating fines, and it was Senate Bill 2140. This bill clarifies penalties for violations of boating and ocean recreation laws and increases them for anyone violating the rules, including but not limited to a diver's flag display requirements, personal flotation device requirements, and authorized camping within the state small boat harbors or boating facilities. Again, we unauthorized camping. Yeah, we absolutely, we certainly don't want that. Or unauthorized mooring, but it goes on, anchorage or storage of a throwcraft or vessel, it goes on. They shall be guilty of a petty misdemeanor and shall be fined not more than $1,000, all in the law, which was all in the law previously, and in prison for not more than 30 days or both. So we had concerns about this bill. The commercial ocean recreation activity industry was concerned as well about increasing penalties to potential imprisonment. Ethics in business is part of our mission, and all of our members have to sign an ethics statement when you join the Maui Chamber of Commerce, right? You need to operate your business ethically to be a part of our organization, which is, as we've shared before, a nonpartisan, non-sectarian organization, but helping businesses and our community to sustain our economy and our quality of life. These businesses already have permits. They are already aware of doing things the right way and are doing things the right way. It doesn't mean everybody doesn't screw up or do something wrong or a bad actor doesn't come into play. And those are taken care of, and there's already a rule. So should the rule change without them knowing, or if they make a mistake, in putting them in prison for 30 days? So that's a huge challenge. And if you can lose your business in 30 days if the person in prison is running the show. So the bill passed. It's going to the governor. We have concerns. The boating industry on Maui has concerns. They're doing things the right way. We see, it's sort of like, okay, there might be a time where a mistake is made. You might not, for some reason, maybe somebody forgot to put the flag up that day or something happened. Should that put you in prison for 30 days? Because, again, there's so many things in this. It's very broad. And a minor mistake could cause a significant problem. I'm not saying they shouldn't have the flag up. I'm just saying things sometimes happen. So, again, it's concerning, so we're looking into it. And it's something that we'll be addressing. And then lastly, you've heard me mention it before. I will again, because this is going to be an important issue. If you are a business if you bring products in from the continent, if it is shipped in through Young Brothers and you just already had a 25.75% rate increase, for all of those people, for people bringing in food, for the nonprofits who might be shipping in food to help address our food insecurity, for other programs, for those who are supporting housing, all of those supplies. We just had a 25.75% increase. The Public Utilities Commission, which is meant to protect the public, said no rate increase for 2 years. Young Brothers, through our legislative process, got lawmakers to pass a bill that will give them up to 5% automatic increases for the next 2 years. The PUC has to address this. So this is a problem. And then the third year, they can get a full rate increase. So that bill passed in this time of food insecurity, in this time of housing insecurity, and a total crisis, in this time when a down economy, in this time when people are going to see other costs go up because federal government funding is questionable or gone down in certain areas, meaning we're already having to shore that up. This bill passed. So this bill, for as well as the others that I mentioned today that are going to be what they call transmitted or enrolled to the governor, Governor Green, he must inform the legislature of his intent to veto anything on that list by June 30th. And he has until July 15th to deliver the veto. So if the legislature wants to overturn the veto of a bill that the governor vetoed, they must then schedule a special session on or before noon on July 15th to override the governor's veto, and they need a 2/3 vote of the legislature, and must also then amend the bill to answer the governor's objections. Okay? So if some of these bills that I mentioned today, if you are passionate about it, if you feel it's critically important, it's time to reach out to the governor. It's time to say, and it can work both ways. You can say, please, on a bill that you support, it doesn't have to be something that you want him to veto, because you can also reach out and say, hey, this is an important bill. I'm glad we did this. Thank you. Please support it. Make sure it happens. You see people doing that less, because if it's a good bill and the legislature passed it and the governor generally feels it's a good bill, and Hawaii feels it's a good bill, he's generally going to pass it. Sometimes maybe not, but that's rare. But if there's a bad bill that you want to see him killed, this is the final time to do it, right? And it doesn't, and again, the legislature could override him, but then they'd have to address his concerns. This is a challenging time, and you have to ask in this time, why would our state want to circumvent the PUC's process? The PUC is the only one who Young Brothers has to share their business management, their finances with the PUC. They get to see the details, right? They get to really know how the company is actually doing. And they look at that only every few years through a full rate increase. But in the last rate increase, looking at all that and wanting to study some of it more and do a report before there was any further rate increase, they put a 2-year pause. And now the legislature has overridden that. And some will say, well, what about, they have to operate. If they claim hardship and say if they have hardships, they can't operate between our islands, and especially in Maui County. We're a tri-island county. What's going to happen to Molokai and Lanai? What's going to happen? It's a monopoly. They have to provide, through their monopoly, they have to provide shipping between Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. They have to take care of those areas. That's part of the monopoly, which is written into law. And the PUC well understands that, as do we. Some people said, well, they're going to have a rate increase because fuel prices are soaring. That's a separate issue. That's dealt with the PUC separately. So, again, we will see, fuel prices go up and our rates also go up. But that's separate from this rate increase. So they're two independent things. And we're saying not the time to increase the cost to all businesses who have this higher shipping cost, who then have to pass that cost on to their consumers. It trickles down statewide. It impacts us all. So we will be asking for a veto of the Young Brothers rate increase bill. We absolutely will be asking for that. This is not that time. So I hope you've learned something about these different bills today. I hope you can see if you want to take action, areas where you might want to take action, and you understand the timing of the process. Remember, this radio show goes out to broadcast on YouTube and Spotify. So if you missed some of the details, check in there. You can listen to it again and get all the details to help you. But please ring in on the Young Brothers bill. Let the governor know this is not the right time. Anyway, I want to wish you all blessings and aloha. I'll be back on Maui soon, but hui ho from Oahu right now. And I wish you all a beautiful day. Hope you'll join me again next Tuesday. Take care.